The subway car rocked gently as it sped through the dimly lit tunnels of London. It was late, and most passengers were either half asleep or too buried in their phones to notice the man in the brown hoodie eyeing an elderly woman's handbag. She sat quietly, her wrinkled fingers clutching the worn leather strap, unaware of the danger lurking nearby. The man shifted closer. His fingers twitched. With a swift, practiced motion, he unhooked the bag from her wrist and started to slip away. But then, a blur of movement. A strong, calloused hand clamped down on the thief's wrist like a steel trap. The pickpocket barely had time to gasp before he was yanked backward and slammed against a subway pole. The entire car went silent. Standing before the trembling thief was a man with an unmistakable presence. A chiseled jaw, piercing eyes, and a bald head that gleamed under the flickering subway lights. Jason Statham. "Bad idea, mate," Jason said in his signature gravelly voice. The thief tried to yank his arm free, but Jason tightened his grip. "I'd think twice if I were you," he warned. Passengers were now watching with wide eyes. The old woman, realizing what had happened, clutched her chest in shock. I wasn't," the thief stammered. Jason smirked. "You were. And now you've got two choices." He loosened his grip just enough for the man to feel a false sense of hope. "Walk away and never try this again, or I teach you a lesson you won't forget." The thief gulped. The stories about Jason Statham weren't just stories, he was the action hero people saw in movies. And judging by the way his muscles flexed under his jacket, this was not a fight worth picking. With a shaky nod, the pickpocket raised his hands. All right. I'm gone." Jason released him, and the man bolted to the far end of the train. The old woman looked up at her unexpected savior, her eyes full of gratitude. "Young man, I don't know who you are, but thank you." Jason gave her a small smile. "Just a guy on a train, ma'am." He handed her bag back and adjusted his coat as the train pulled into the next station. The doors slid open, and Jason stepped off, disappearing into the London night like a shadow. The legend of Jason Statham, the subway savior, had just begun. The subway doors slid shut, sealing the train in motion once again. Passengers murmured among themselves, exchanging whispers about what had just happened. The old woman clutched her bag tightly, still shaken but grateful. At the far end of the car, the pickpocket, his name was Danny, leaned against the cold metal door, breathing heavily. His heart pounded with a mix of rage and humiliation. Jason Statham had made a fool of him. Danny had been working the underground for years, slipping wallets and purses out of clueless hands. No one had ever stopped him before. And now, some actor, some bloody movie star, had humiliated him in front of everyone. No, he wasn't going to let this slide. As the train screeched to a halt at the next station, Danny slipped out, his eyes scanning the platform. There. A glimpse of a leather jacket. Statham was moving through the crowd, walking towards the escalators, calm and confident. Danny followed, his fingers tightening into fists. He wasn't going to fight the man, he wasn't that stupid. But he knew people. Dangerous people. And Jason Statham had just made the wrong kind of enemy. A dangerous pursuit. Jason walked through the bustling streets of London, his mind already shifting away from the subway incident. Just another day, another scumbag trying to prey on the weak. But something felt off. Years of stunt work, fight training, and real-world experience had given him an instinct for danger. And right now, every nerve in his body was telling him he was being watched. He turned a corner, glancing at a shop window just in time to see a reflection, a shadow slipping behind a bus stop. Jason smirked. Amateur. He slowed his pace, letting his stalker believe he was unaware. Then, with a sudden pivot, he ducked into a narrow alleyway. He pressed his back against the brick wall and waited. Seconds later, Danny crept around the corner. Jason grabbed him in a flash, slamming him against the wall. "Following me? Really?" Jason growled, his grip tightening on Danny's collar. Danny smirked despite his fear. "You don't know who you're messing with, mate." Jason raised an eyebrow. "No, you don't." That's when Danny whistled. From the other end of the alley, two large figures emerged from the shadows. One was bald with a jagged scar down his cheek. The other had knuckles the size of bricks. Jason sighed. "Aw, now this is getting interesting." Danny grinned. "Boys, show him what happens when you mess with the wrong people." The two thugs advanced. Jason rolled his shoulders, cracking his knuckles. Well, if they wanted a fight. They were about to get a Jason Statham fight. Jason exhaled slowly, rolling his neck as the two thugs closed in. The narrow alley didn't give them much room to maneuver, but that worked to his advantage. Scarface swung first, a wide, sloppy haymaker. Jason ducked, letting the punch sail over his head, then drove a brutal elbow into the man's ribs. Scarface gasped, stumbling backward. Brick Knuckles lunged, aiming a sledgehammer-like fist at Jason's face. Jason sidestepped, grabbed the man's wrist mid-swing, and twisted, hard. There was a sickening crack as Brick Knuckles screamed in pain, clutching his broken hand. Danny's smirk vanished. Jason turned to him, cracking his knuckles. "Still think this was a good idea, mate?" Danny backed away, eyes darting toward the alley exit. "Oh look, I didn't." Jason grabbed the front of Danny's hoodie and yanked him forward, their faces inches apart. "I'll make this simple," Jason said, his voice low and menacing. "Stay away from little old ladies. Stay away from me. And if I ever see you again..." He didn't finish the sentence. Instead, he drove his knee into Danny's stomach. Hard. Danny wheezed, collapsing onto the alley floor, clutching his gut. Jason took a step back, dusted off his coat, and sighed. Bloody amateurs. He turned and walked out of the alley, stepping onto the busy London street as if nothing had happened. A new threat. As Jason disappeared into the crowd, Danny struggled to his feet, coughing. Scarface groaned beside him, and Brick Knuckles whimpered over his ruined hand. Danny's anger burned hotter than ever. "That bastard," he muttered, wiping blood from his lip. Scarface grunted. "What now?" Danny took out his phone, fingers shaking as he dialed a number. After 2 rings, a voice answered. Deep. Dangerous. "You'd better have a good reason for calling me, Danny." Danny swallowed hard. "I do. I need a favor." A pause. Then, "Who's the target?" Danny's grip on the phone tightened. "Jason Statham." Silence. Then a low chuckle. "Now that is interesting." The line went dead. Danny smirked through the pain. Statham might have won this round, but things were about to get much worse. Jason walked through the streets of London, hands in his pockets, his mind already moving on from the alley fight. It wasn't the first time he'd put some street thugs in their place, and it wouldn't be the last. But something still bugged him. That little rat, Danny, didn't seem like the type to take a beating and let it go. Jason knew that look in his eyes: desperation, humiliation, and worst of all, vengeance. Jason smirked to himself. Let him try. Through the pub. A few men at the bar turned to look before quickly minding their own business. Just an actor? The Reaper leaned closer, his dark eyes glinting. "Let me tell you something, kid." That actor was an Olympic-level diver, trained in martial arts, and did all his own stunts before Hollywood even knew his name. "You think he just pretends to be dangerous?" Danny swallowed hard but clenched his fists. "I don't care. He humiliated me. And I want him gone." The Reaper took a sip of his whiskey, considering it. Then he grinned. "All right. Let's see what happens when the hunter becomes the hunted." The next night, Jason was walking along the Thames, enjoying the quiet of the city. He wasn't the type to be paranoid, but that feeling, that instinct, was nagging at him again. He wasn't alone. His steps slowed. The reflection in a nearby glass window confirmed it, two figures trailing him from a distance. Jason sighed. "Really? Again?" He kept walking, turning down a narrow street. The two men followed. He led them deeper into the maze of alleyways, away from the main roads, away from witnesses. Then, he stopped. The two men hesitated. Jason turned around slowly, his hands in his pockets, his expression calm. "All right, boys," he said. "Let's get this over with." Before they could react, Jason moved. One man reached for a knife, bad mistake. Jason kicked him in the ribs so hard he crumpled to the ground like a rag doll. The second thug threw a wild punch. Jason sidestepped and hammered a fist into his jaw, sending him staggering into a pile of trash cans. It was over in seconds. Jason cracked his knuckles. "That all you got?" A slow clap echoed through the alley. Jason turned. There, standing at the entrance to the alley, was him. Leon the Reaper Vaughn. "Impressive," the Reaper said, stepping forward. "But I'm not like them." Jason's smirk faded. He recognized the name. And from the way the Reaper carried himself, Jason knew one thing: this wasn't some street thug. This was a real problem. The Reaper grinned. "You ready for a real fight, Statham?" Jason rolled his shoulders. Finally, a challenge. The alley was dead silent. The Reaper stood at the entrance, rolling his wrists like a man who'd done this 1,000 times before. Jason eyed him carefully. This wasn't some idiot off the street, this was a pro. And Jason loved a challenge. The Reaper smirked. "I've been waiting for a proper fight." Jason cracked his neck. "You'll wish you hadn't." Then the Reaper moved. Fast. Jason barely dodged the first punch. It wasn't like the wild swings from street thugs, this was precise, calculated. The Reaper followed up with a knee strike, aiming for Jason's ribs. Jason blocked it, but the force sent him sliding back. Damn. He's strong. The Reaper didn't let up. He threw a spinning elbow, Jason ducked, countering with a sharp right hook. It connected. The Reaper staggered back, wiping blood from his lip. His grin widened. "Oh, this is gonna be fun." Jason exhaled. "Mate, you talk too much." This time, Jason attacked. He feinted left, then snapped a roundhouse kick into the Reaper's ribs. The Reaper grunted but didn't go down. Instead, he caught Jason's leg and twisted, hard. Jason spun midair, landing in a crouch. He barely had time to react before the Reaper lunged, aiming a brutal punch at his face. Jason tilted his head just enough for it to graze his cheek. He countered with a devastating uppercut. The Reaper's head snapped back. Jason didn't let him recover, he drove a knee into his stomach, then grabbed the back of his head and slammed it into a nearby dumpster. The Reaper staggered, breathing heavily. Jason wiped his lip. Had enough? The Reaper spit blood onto the pavement. Not even close. Then he pulled out a knife. Jason sighed. Oh, come on. The Reaper lunged. The blade flashed under the dim alley light. Jason dodged left, feeling the knife slice through the edge of his jacket. Too close. The Reaper slashed again. Jason caught his wrist mid-swing and twisted, hard. The knife clattered to the ground. Jason wasted no time. He grabbed the Reaper by the collar, lifted him, and slammed him into the alley wall. Hard. The Reaper groaned, his body going limp. Jason let him drop to the ground. He exhaled, adjusting his coat. Told you. Bad idea. Danny watched from the shadows, eyes wide with fear. Jason turned, spotting him instantly. Danny flinched. Jason took a slow step forward. Still want revenge? Danny shook his head so fast it almost came off. And no, mate. We're good. All good. Jason smirked. Smart choice. With that, he walked off into the night, leaving the Reaper unconscious and Danny shaking in his boots. Another day, another idiot taught a lesson. Jason Statham had one. Again. Jason Statham walked away from the alley, his boots echoing against the wet pavement. Another night, another fight, another idiot thinking they could take him down. But as he turned the corner, his instincts screamed at him. Something wasn't right. He caught the reflection in a shop window. Danny was gone. But the Reaper? He was moving. Jason spun around just in time. A gunshot rang out. Jason dropped low, the bullet whizzing past his head, shattering a streetlight behind him. The Reaper stood at the alley's entrance, blood dripping from his temple, a pistol steady in his hand. His eyes burned with fury. You should have killed me when you had the chance, Statham. Jason exhaled. I don't kill idiots. The Reaper smirked. That's your mistake. Another shot. Jason moved. He sprinted forward before the Reaper could react, grabbing a trash can lid from the sidewalk. He spun and threw it like a frisbee. Bang! The gun fired, but the lid struck the Reaper's hand, knocking the pistol away. The Reaper let out a grunt, shaking his fingers as the gun clattered to the ground. Jason didn't give him a second chance. He was on him in an instant. A brutal punch to the ribs. A sharp elbow to the jaw. Jason caught the Reaper's wrist and snapped it, sending a jolt of pain through the man's body. The Reaper collapsed to his knees, panting. Jason crouched beside him. You done? The Reaper glared at him, his breath ragged. But there was something new in his eyes. Respect. He spat blood onto the pavement. Yeah. I'm done. Jason stood up, dusting off his coat. Good. He turned to walk away. Then he paused. Without looking back, he spoke. Tell Danny to get a real job. Then, just like that, Jason disappeared into the London night. The Reaper sat there, chuckling through the pain. Damn, that guy's a legend. The Reaper sat in the alley, his wrist throbbing, his face battered. He wiped the blood from his lip, staring at the distant figure of Jason Statham disappearing into the London night. For a moment, he considered just letting it go. But then a black SUV rolled up beside him. The back door swung open. A man stepped out. Tall. Suit crisp. Eyes cold as ice. The Reaper's stomach tightened. He knew this man. Viktor Sokolov. Russian ex-Spetsnaz. An enforcer for the kind of people you didn't cross. And right now, Sokolov was looking down at him like a disappointed father. What a mess, Sokolov muttered in a thick Russian accent. You said you could handle him. The Reaper spat on the pavement. He's not just some actor. He's the real deal. Sokolov smirked. I know. Then he crouched beside the Reaper, his voice lowering. That's why my employer is very interested in him. The Reaper frowned. Who's your employer? Sokolov's smile widened. Someone who really wants Jason Statham off the board. The Reaper's pulse quickened. Why? Sokolov's expression darkened. Because Statham took something from him. And now? He wants revenge. The Reaper swallowed hard. He didn't know who Sokolov was working for, but he knew one thing. Jason Statham was about to have a much bigger problem than a back alley brawl. Jason stepped into his apartment, tossing his jacket onto the couch. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, exhaling as he leaned against the counter. It should have been over. Danny was out. The Reaper was broken. Another night, another lesson taught. But that itch at the back of his neck? The feeling that something wasn't over? It was stronger than ever. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Jason sighed, taking a sip of whiskey before answering. Yeah. Silence. Then, a deep Russian voice. Mr. Statham. Jason's grip on the glass tightened. Who's this? A low chuckle. A friend. Or an enemy. Depends how you play your cards. Jason exhaled through his nose. You lot never learn, do you? The voice continued, ignoring him. You should have killed the Reaper. Now you've caught the attention of someone bigger. Jason rolled his eyes. Let me guess. Big crime boss. Wants me dead. Typical Tuesday. A pause. Then the voice spoke again. This isn't a game, Statham. You took something from my employer. And now? He's taking something from you. Jason's jaw clenched. What the hell are you talking about? There was a beep. A message came through. Jason opened it. His blood ran cold. A photo. An old woman, frail, kind eyes, clutching a leather handbag. The same one from the subway. A red laser dot hovered on her forehead. The message below read. Tick-tock, Statham. Jason's heart pounded. They were going after her. He slammed the glass down, grabbed his coat, and bolted for the door. Whoever these people were, they just made the biggest mistake of their lives. Jason sprinted down the dimly lit streets of London, his mind racing. They had the old woman in their sights. He didn't know who they were yet, but that didn't matter. All that mattered was getting to her first. Pulling out his phone, he redialed the number from the mysterious message. No answer. Jason gritted his teeth. Fine. I'll do this the hard way. He hailed a cab, jumping in before the driver could even greet him. Victoria Station. Now. The driver, an older man with a thick Cockney accent, glanced at Jason through the rearview mirror. Bit of a rush, mate? Jason's glare said everything. The cab screeched off into the night. Across the city, inside a darkened high-rise, Viktor Sokolov watched Jason's location on a monitor. His men had cloned Statham's phone minutes ago. They knew exactly where he was going. Sokolov smirked. Like a moth to the flame. A voice behind him chuckled. He's fast. But let's see how fast he really is. Sokolov turned to face the man in the shadows. He was older, dressed in an expensive suit, swirling a glass of vodka in his hand. His name was Ivan Petrov, a high-level crime lord who had ruled the London underworld for years. And right now, he wanted one thing. Jason Statham. Dead. Petrov set his drink down. The old woman? Sokolov nodded. She's the bait. He'll come for her. Petrov's grin was cold. Good. Make sure he regrets it. The cab screeched to a halt outside Victoria Station. Jason tossed a few bills at the driver and jumped out, scanning the area. The station was packed. Tourists. Commuters. Noise everywhere. But Jason wasn't looking for them. He was looking for her. Then he saw her. The old woman from the subway, standing near a bench, clutching her handbag, completely unaware of the danger. Jason moved fast, weaving through the crowd. Almost there. Then. Something felt off. That instinct, the one that had saved his life more times than he could count, kicked in. He stopped. Scanned the area. Too many people standing still. Watching. Hands in their pockets. Not commuters. Not tourists. Killers. Jason exhaled. Ah, hell. Then. Bang. A gunshot rang out. The crowd screamed. Jason moved. He dove forward, grabbing the old woman and pulling her down just as a bullet tore through the air where she'd been standing. People ran in every direction. Chaos. Jason looked up. A sniper, rooftop. Then. More movement. 4 men. Rushing toward him. Armed. Jason sighed. You boys really don't know when to quit. He stood, cracking his knuckles. The first attacker lunged. Jason sidestepped, grabbing his wrist and twisting, snap. The man held as his elbow bent the wrong way. The second thug swung a knife. Jason caught his arm, yanked him forward, and headbutted him so hard he went limp. The last 2 hesitated. Jason smirked. Smart. Then he grabbed a nearby suitcase and launched it at them. It slammed into one guy's chest, sending him flying. The last man turned to run. Jason wasn't having it. He sprinted after him, grabbed the back of his jacket, and slammed him into a vending machine. The thug groaned. Jason leaned in. Who sent you? The man gasped. P. Petrov. Jason frowned. Who's Petrov? The thug coughed. Biggest crime boss in London. You took something from him. Jason narrowed his eyes. I don't even know the guy. The thug let out a weak chuckle. Doesn't matter. He knows you. Jason exhaled, dropping the man. Then he turned to the old woman, who was staring at him in shock. Are you all right, love? She nodded, shaking. I think so. Jason offered his hand, helping her up. Come on. Let's get you somewhere safe. As he led her away, his mind was already working. Petrov. Whoever he was, he just made a mistake. A big one. Jason wasn't just going to defend himself anymore. He was going on the attack. Jason led the old woman through the chaos of Victoria Station, keeping an eye on the rooftops. Whoever this Petrov was, he wasn't just another thug, he had an army. And Jason wasn't in the mood for games. He guided the old woman to a waiting taxi. "Go home, lock your doors, and don't open them for anyone." She hesitated, clutching his hand. "I don't know who you are, but thank you." Jason gave her a reassuring nod. "Stay safe." As the taxi pulled away, Jason turned back toward the station. He wasn't running anymore. He was hunting. It didn't take long to track them down. The thug he'd slammed into the vending machine had given up everything, where Petrov's hideout was, how many men he had, even where they parked their getaway cars. Amateurs. An hour later, Jason stood outside a massive warehouse on the Thames. Guards at the entrance. More on the rooftop. Probably a dozen inside. Jason smirked. That all? He moved fast. 2 guards at the front, gone before they even saw him coming. One quick jab to the throat, another thrown headfirst into a steel door. Jason slipped inside. The warehouse was dimly lit, crates stacked high. He could hear voices. Then, a familiar one. "You failed me, Sokolov." Jason crouched behind a crate, peeking around the corner. There he was. Ivan Petrov. Slick suit. Expensive watch. Surrounded by armed men. And right in front of him, on his knees, was Viktor Sokolov, his own right-hand man. Petrov sighed, pulling out a silenced pistol. "Disappointment doesn't sit well with me." Bang. Sokolov crumpled to the ground. Jason exhaled. "Well, that saves me the trouble." Then he stepped out. Everyone turned. Guns raised. Jason smiled. "All right, boys. Let's dance." The first shot came from the left. Jason dodged, grabbed a nearby crowbar, and flung it straight into the shooter's face. Another man charged. Jason grabbed him and used him as a human shield as more bullets whizzed past. He spun, slammed an elbow into one thug's nose, then grabbed his gun and... Bang. 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 3 down. Petrov backed away, eyes wide. "Kill him!" Jason grabbed a knife from a fallen guard, throwing it across the room, thunk. It landed in a man's shoulder. He screamed, dropping his weapon. 2 more came at him. Jason flipped a wooden crate over, sending one man tumbling. He grabbed the other by the collar and threw him headfirst into a metal beam. The last thug standing hesitated. Jason raised an eyebrow. "Go on, then." The man dropped his gun and ran. Jason turned to Petrov. Just the 2 of them now. Petrov pulled a golden pistol from his jacket. "You think you're a hero?" Jason stepped closer. "No." Bang. Jason dodged, closing the distance in seconds. He grabbed Petrov's wrist, twisted, crack, the gun fell. Petrov screamed. Jason silenced him with a punch so hard he crashed through a stack of crates. Petrov coughed, blood dripping from his mouth. "Please, we can make a deal." Jason picked up the golden pistol. "Here's the deal." He pointed it at Petrov's head. The crime boss froze. Jason smirked. "Stay out of my city." Then, bang. Jason fired right past Petrov's ear, shattering a light bulb behind him. Petrov flinched, eyes wide with terror. Jason dropped the gun and walked away. By the time the police raided the warehouse, Jason was long gone. Petrov was found tied to a chair, a note pinned to his chest. "Try again, and next time, I won't miss. A week later, news spread that Petrov had fled London. Jason sat in a quiet pub, sipping a whiskey. The old woman's face flashed on the news, safe and sound, back to her normal life. Jason smirked to himself. London was quiet again. For now. He took another sip. Then his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Jason sighed. Here we go again. He answered. Yeah,